after a disaster, you have to be prepared for another disaster. So you couldn't buy lumber, you couldn't buy water, you couldn't buy gas cans, you couldn't buy a generator. None of the, if you were trying to get ready between Irma and Maria, you were screwed. So you had to be ready going into it. We got all worked up for Irma, so there was a little bit of complacency for Maria. Locals and a lot of people were just like, it's not good. We got all worked up for nothing 2 weeks ago. It's not that big of a deal. It was. Like I used to get the question, well, did you were there, like you didn't evacuate? It was like, there was no evacuating. The only people that got off the island were people that had their own planes, their own boats, or worked for the government. That was it. There was no room for anybody else.
In the kind of aftermath and like the days and stuff afterwards, anything else kind of unexpected in there for you that maybe challenged some of your assumptions about disaster preparedness?
The biggest, most annoying thing was when you lose your signal, and we all become so dependent on these things. When you get it back, you get so inundated with messages and with updates that you can't get a message out. So you can't even use your phone because it's just like ding, 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 and it'll go for 2 minutes, and you might only have 2 minutes of signal. And so that was really, really frustrating because you finally find a signal, and okay, I can let my mom know that I'm alive, and you can't get a message out. So that was really, really frustrating. And so I called my grandmother, and I could hear her, but she couldn't hear me. So I was hearing her say, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm trying to say, "I'm okay," and she can't hear it. And it was just like heartbreaking. My 100-year-old grandmother freaking out that I'm a ghost signal or something like that.
Yeah.
We didn't. The water was the big issue, and I had some drinking water, but I had set aside, like, we had filled our washing machine, the clothes washer full of water. I'd filled the tubs full of water, and I had a couple of 45-gallon like garbage cans that I'd filled full of water. And again, seems like we're gonna have lots, but you're using that to flush the toilet and stuff like that. And after a few days, you realize, you know what, I'm not going to use this water for that. I'm going to go get water out of the community pool or ocean water or whatever, and I'll use that. But eventually we lost, that all went away, and I ran out. So then we were washing at the beach. We'd go to the ocean and wash, but all of that runoff from the storm was just sitting in the water. And people were getting a lot of infections from the waste that ended up on the shore for several weeks afterwards. So our garage door blew in, and we were lucky not to lose any glass. But every second house or so in our block lost glass. And once one window goes, they all go, or several of them will go. And then what do you do, right? So being able to either isolate areas of your house so that you can maintain a livable space, or a way to patch up those windows when they go, is also really vital. We couldn't figure out why we couldn't get any cell service. And I was like, couldn't figure out, like, I thought the towers were down, then I saw the towers weren't down, and the transmitter dishes are on the towers and stuff like that. Later on, we found out that people were drilling into the diesel tanks and stealing the diesel fuel from the generators for the hospitals, for the cell towers, for anything that wasn't guarded. They were stealing the fuel because the fuel was so hard to come by. The first time that they allowed us to get to buy fuel, we could only buy $20 worth, and you couldn't be out past curfew. But you had to get in line at like 2 a.m. in order to get that $20 worth of gas. So fortunately, we had filled up our car with, like, to the top before the storm. Simple old rules, right? Fill up your car. So many people didn't have full tanks that were just, freaking out. You had one of the installed kind of larger commercial generators for your home, people were running those all the time. The problem is their neighbors didn't have it, so their windows are open, and now you've got carbon monoxide from your neighbor's generator going into your house. And that's a lot of those deaths that didn't get counted toward as storm deaths were actually from carbon monoxide poisoning. I know at least 2 people that died.
Wow.
And I couldn't open my windows at night because my neighbor was running his generator all the time. If you've got a generator running at your house, you want your house isolated from the rest of the grid. So you have to have a special disconnect. Most of them are automatic here in the States, but a manual one is like $150, and it's literally just a big switch that turns off the power to your house. In case power comes back on, you don't want that line getting energized from your house and hurting someone. So
any thoughts on a couple of things that you would just like put in place knowing what you know now?
Water filtration, because even when people did get water back, you couldn't trust the water that was coming out of the tap. So having some sort of water filtration was really important. And I did see some people creating their own just with, sand and activated carbon or activated charcoal. And then I had a water filter from camping and stuff like that. I had a lot of just camping stuff that all came in really handy, because no matter how much water you store, you never have enough. Like the basics, a hatchet, an axe, a rope, tape, all those things that you and I probably are familiar with needing. Most people don't even have it in their garage. You know what I mean? A lot of people had machetes, but most of them didn't have a stone to sharpen them on. So simple stuff like that. It's like, okay, you've got it, but how are you going to maintain it? You can't just take it to somebody and have them do it for you. So, or maybe they only sharpened it on their grinder or something like that. They didn't have any way to do it manually. So learning how to do things manually, having a rope and tackle and not just, or pulleys or, that's where I saw a lot of innovative stuff, was figuring out how to move some of these huge trees without any heavy equipment. That was pretty interesting. We cleared brush for, I'm guessing 3 weeks before we had any equipment. So we didn't have any chainsaws. We used machetes and axes and saws and ropes, and that's how we cleared brush we were talking, 6 feet deep of debris everywhere. Food, of course, having a good stockpile of non-perishables. And I got a lot, in the first few days, I got a lot of, why are you being so harsh? Why are you being so strict, basically? And later on, it made sense. In the first 2 weeks, there was coconuts on the ground everywhere, right? Lots of fresh green coconuts open. I wasn't drinking water. I was just drinking coconut water all the time. And, but I would have rationed some of those. I would have filled up my car full of coconuts and stuck them in the backyard and just had a couple a day, instead of just drinking them like they were going out of style, because they keep pretty well. And after 2 weeks or so, it started getting pretty scarce. And now all of a sudden there's no more coconuts. And there's all these open coconuts that people wasted, like they didn't take the meat out of it. They didn't, you know what I mean? So I would have been a lot more frugal with my coconuts. We ended up having my mother-in-law staying with us because her place got damaged in Irma, and then we had a lady from the church staying with us. So those 2 extra mouths to feed, you budget and you plan to have all this food and stuff ready for X number of days or whatever, and it's just going down. And smaller portions. I made the mistake of buying a lot of big cans of meat and stuff like that, because that's all I could find. And then you open it, and I was by myself by that point because I got my wife and family off the island, and I ended up giving most of that stuff to my neighbors because it was going to go bad, right? So stuff you don't think about, you just get what you can get. But had I had the choice, I would have gotten a lot more smaller portions, just to avoid the waste. fortunately, there was the community kind of came together, and we all kind of shared our food, and it, not as much of that went to waste, but I didn't use what I purchased.
Was there anything kind of creative or innovative that you saw kind of coming out of it as far as people being resourceful?
Almost everyone went to some sort of solar. So I would highly encourage, as part of preparedness, having solar chargers, even if it's just for your cell phones and flashlights. So as far as innovation goes, solar, having solar, whether you have it just as an emergency that you can set up after the fact, or if it just being off the grid, or at least having some component of being not completely reliant on the grid, is huge, especially in environments that are suitable for it. Even though they had diesel generators in that instance, they didn't have any diesel. So one thing if I could finish with something that's probably the most important, it's not a political statement. I don't think anyone should ever expect the government to save them. What I mean by that is they can't expect, any sort of emergency services to save them in a situation like that, because they're going to be completely overwhelmed. So you have to be able to do it yourself, because they might not be able to get to you. They might be in trouble themselves. We brought food to Homeland Security because, like, not just friends of ours, like one of our friends worked for the FBI, and they hadn't eaten in like 72 hours, and they were just going. So they're in the same situation as you, and they're trying to help you. You know what I mean? So take care of yourself if you can. That's my message.